Welcome to our Trump Briefing Show. Today, we've got some exciting updates on politics, economics, and international tensions. First up, President Trump is nominating Chad Meredith for a federal judgeship, someone Biden almost considered. This nomination has stirred up debates, especially since Meredith's anti-abortion stance caused previous opposition. Now, with support from key senators, this appointment highlights ongoing political negotiations and the fierce battle over judicial choices. Next, Trump is making headlines again by demanding a massive 2.5-point cut in interest rates from the Federal Reserve. Despite the Fed's cautious approach, Trump's calling for bold moves, accusing the Fed chair of holding back economic benefits. The question is, will the Fed follow his lead or stick to their inflation-focused strategy? The economy's resilience is promising, but tariffs and inflation still hang in the balance. Finally, the Middle East is still tense, with Iran's military weakening and Israel striking back. Iran's missile attacks have injured hundreds, but their capacity to escalate further is diminishing. President Trump faces tough choices, whether to intervene directly or pursue diplomacy. Meanwhile, Israel's threats against Iran's top leader add to the complex web of regional conflict. It's a delicate dance of power, diplomacy, and risk, with the potential for major shifts in the coming days. Please continue to stay tuned for more detailed insights. The Toronto Star vividly recounts the intriguing political dance surrounding Chad Meredith, a Kentucky lawyer with a controversial anti-abortion record, who President Trump now plans to nominate for a federal judgeship. Once nearly appointed by President Biden, Meredith's nomination was halted by Senator Rand Paul, who accused Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of a secret deal that scuttled the process. This time, however, Paul has reversed his stance, endorsing Meredith and supporting his confirmation, highlighting the shifting political alliances and the enduring influence of the blue slip rule. The narrative underscores the tension between judicial qualifications and ideological considerations, with critics raising alarms over Meredith's record, contrasting with the praise from Trump and McConnell, who emphasize his devotion to the rule of law and the Constitution. CNN vividly captures President Trump's relentless and fiery criticism of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, demanding an unprecedented 2.5 percentage point rate cut amidst a backdrop of economic resilience and inflation concerns. Trump, despite appointing Powell in 2017, lambasts him on social media, accusing him of delaying economic gains and costing the country billions. The Fed's cautious stance, maintaining rates despite Trump's calls for aggressive cuts, reflects a careful balancing act amid inflationary pressures from tariffs and global economic uncertainties. Powell remains focused on the Fed's dual mandate of low inflation and high employment, dismissing Trump's political pressure and emphasizing the importance of a stable economy, even as Trump continues to advocate for drastic rate reductions to bolster short-term debt management and economic growth. Finally, CNN offers a compelling analysis of the complex and precarious situation involving Iran, Israel, and the United States amid escalating conflict. It describes how Iran's military capabilities have been significantly diminished after Israel's relentless strikes on its nuclear facilities and military leaders, revealing Iran's limited capacity for retaliation. The narrative explores the strategic calculations faced by Trump, who might opt for targeted missile strikes or allow Israel to continue its campaign while seeking diplomatic resolutions, all amid fears of nuclear proliferation. The piece underscores the delicate balance of power, the risks of further escalation, and the possibility that Iran's recent setbacks might make a military confrontation more manageable, yet the shadow of unknown variables and Iran's secretive nuclear ambitions looms large, complicating the decision-making process for the U.S. administration. The Associated Press reports that President Donald Trump has once again postponed the deadline to ban TikTok in the United States, signing an executive order to extend the platform's operation for another 90 days. This marks the third extension since the initial ban was enacted, reflecting the ongoing negotiations between the U.S. government and ByteDance, TikTok's Chinese owner. Despite the lack of a clear legal foundation for these extensions, they have not faced significant court challenges, and Trump has gained popularity on TikTok, even amassing over 15 million followers. Public opinion remains divided, with recent surveys indicating a decline in support for a ban, primarily driven by concerns over data security, while critics like Senator Mark Warner argue that the administration is flouting the law and ignoring security risks. The Independent details President Trump's contemplation of joining Israel's military campaign against Iran, which has escalated following a series of Israeli airstrikes targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure and military sites. Israel's recent strikes have included a heavy water reactor linked to Iran's nuclear program, and the country has suffered missile attacks from Iran, resulting in over 200 wounded. Trump's stance appears increasingly ambiguous, initially denying involvement but later suggesting he might authorize a broader military response. Experts warn that any U.S. escalation could lead to regional chaos, with potential retaliatory strikes on American targets and a significant increase in oil prices. Analysts emphasize that careful, targeted action might be necessary to prevent a broader conflict, but the situation remains highly volatile and unpredictable. The Toronto Star reports on the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran, which has turned deadly with missile exchanges and targeted strikes. Iran's missile attacks have wounded hundreds and caused significant damage, including to hospitals and residential areas in Israel, while Israel's retaliatory strikes have targeted Iran's nuclear sites, including the Iraq heavy water reactor. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz publicly threatened Iran's supreme leader, calling for his removal amid fears of escalation. Iran, for its part, has refused to surrender and has warned that U.S. involvement would lead to devastating consequences. The situation remains tense, with Israel's strikes aiming to prevent Iran's nuclear ambitions and Iran warning of possible retaliation, creating a precarious regional standoff that could spiral into wider conflict. The Toronto Star vividly depicts the sobering reality of Canada's electric vehicle (EV) industry, illustrating the hopes that once electrified the Ingersoll plant in late 2022, only to be dashed by sluggish sales and trade tensions. GM's ambitious plan to produce 50,000 BrightDrop vans annually was met with disappointment, as tariffs imposed by the U.S. under Trump's administration compounded the downturn, forcing GM to idle the plant and lay off hundreds of workers. Union representatives like Bob Pullham and Mike Van Boekel expressed their dismay at the economic uncertainty, emphasizing how the trade war and market sluggishness have derailed Canada's EV ambitions, despite significant federal investments and long-term goals for zero-emission vehicles. The ripple effects threaten local economies, with Ingersoll's mayor highlighting the importance of the plant as the town's largest employer, and experts acknowledging that Canada's EV transition faces bigger hurdles than initially anticipated, especially in a market hampered by high costs, colder climates, and tepid consumer interest. Nikkei Asia sheds light on the strategic recalibrations of Japan's automotive giants amidst the U.S. tariffs, revealing Honda's cautious openness to collaboration with Nissan after their merger talks collapsed. With the imposition of a 25% tariff on U.S. imports, both companies are now exploring joint ventures in EV battery production and technological research to bolster competitiveness and mitigate the impact of trade barriers. Honda's CEO Toshihiro Maebe and Nissan's Ivan Espinosa acknowledged the need for cooperation, especially as Nissan undergoes a leadership change and implements a drastic restructuring plan, including factory closures and layoffs. The renewed dialogue signals a pragmatic shift towards partnership rather than rivalry, aiming to regain industry dominance in a challenging global landscape where tariffs threaten to undermine their growth prospects and market share, particularly in the vital U.S. market. Australian Broadcasting Corporation reports on the escalating tensions in the Middle East, where Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz's incendiary remarks about Iran's supreme leader, Khamenei, underscore the volatile geopolitical climate. Following an Iranian missile strike on an Israeli hospital, Katz declared that Khamenei can no longer be allowed to exist, intensifying calls for decisive action. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump weighs the possibility of strikes on Iran, especially targeting its underground nuclear facilities, amid warnings from European leaders advocating for diplomacy. Russia and China have condemned Israel's actions, with Xi Jinping urging restraint and warning against escalation, while Moscow warns against U.S. military intervention, emphasizing Iran's strategic alliances. The region teeters on the brink of wider conflict, with global powers grappling with the dangers of military escalation and the fragile pursuit of diplomatic solutions. The Toronto Star reports on Juneteenth celebrations across the United States, highlighting the significance of this day as the anniversary of the emancipation of enslaved Black people in Texas in 1865. In Portsmouth, New Hampshire, the Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire launched an early series of commemorations, including history tours, community discussions, and a community dance, culminating in the rededication of the African Burying Ground Memorial Park. The organizers emphasized the importance of acknowledging the contradictions in America's founding narratives, urging a more honest retelling that recognizes the humanity and struggles of Black Americans, including the fact that many founding fathers held slaves and had children with enslaved women. Although Juneteenth has been celebrated by Black Americans for generations and gained national recognition as a federal holiday in 2021, recent political actions, such as the Trump administration's efforts to restrict diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and remove Black history content from federal websites, cast a shadow over the observance. In predominantly white states like New Hampshire, the hope for making Juneteenth a paid holiday appears dim amid a political climate that seems to regress in understanding civil rights and inclusion. Nonetheless, advocates like Jerian Boggies remain optimistic, believing that sharing the truth through celebrations fosters community bonds and helps illuminate current issues, emphasizing that knowledge and unity are vital even in challenging times. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6do Brief via email.
News breaks, buzz the ground, stories spit, walls come down. Voices merge in the sound, faces mix in the crowd. Broadcasters paint the scene, world events on our screen. Every link a different theme, words collide in the stream. 6 degrees connect the dots, background stories more than us. Hear the voices rise aloud, truth unveils in every spot. Cultures clash across the globe, spin the threads in a stroke. Every story wears a robe, truth and lies in their code. Journalistic real deep, secrets out they don't see. Every angle they will keep, in the news we take a lead. New perspectives day by day, hidden truths come to play. In the background shades of gray, every story finds its way. Perspectives day by day, hidden truths come to play. In the background shades of gray, every story finds its way.
Cultures, I go, what really or do not, what enough to be you, everything and ever, what enough and after, what enough and after, what enough and after, not 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 enough.